incompetent. Wow. So the Supreme Court ruled unanimously in favor of Donald Trump regarding his disqualifications from being on the ballot in Colorado. Um, so I said, okay, whatever. Let's see what their reasoning is. And then when I saw the reasoning, I was like, holy crap. This country is doomed. And the fact that most conservatives won't pick up on this, and even the liberals. I mean, I doubt that the same liberal media that's been repeating the same nonsense. You hear a lot of the Republicans talking about, it's political, everything government does is political. Politics is what they do. That's why we call them politicians. It's like accusing a doctor of being medical. He's being very medical, right? Partisan is the word, right? But they're saying it with confidence, and then the liberal media repeating the same stuff, and then the audience, they just, a bunch of sheep. So, oh yeah, it's political, everything's political, right? So that same kind of mentality and incompetence from our media, I believe, is why even liberal media is probably not going to pick up on this. They're probably going to find some other angle about, how dangerous it is for the country and insurrectionists, and this is wrong, and how could the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court is they're conservative. That's smoke back there. What is that? How could the Supreme Court? They're corrupt. A bunch of it's a conservative Supreme Court, and they're helping this guy to destroy democracy. That's what they're going to say, right? And since their audience, not unlike the conservative audience, I mean, it's an American thing. It's not about the ideology. It's an American, this country just been so dumbed down. Their audience is just going to go along and be like, yeah, this is a Supreme Court. They're corrupt. It's a conservative thing. If we had more liberals, then this wouldn't have happened. But it was unanimous. You can't use that excuse. Think. So why do I think the Supreme Court's decision was incompetent? And then why do I put a question mark at the end of my video title? Because this has just happened as breaking news. I got to drill into the basis of the Supreme Court ruling a little bit more to understand the thought process. But per Breaking Points, which I believe is a pretty good show, I do have major problems with them for a couple of different reasons. And one of the reasons that I have a problem with them could apply here, right? I could very well see them. They would love nothing more than to be able to call out, liberals, to be the ones, especially Crystal, I'm a liberal, but I have integrity, and I'm the one who's gonna call out the liberals for being ridiculous. I'm not one of these crazy blue and on folks, right? I feel like she does good work, but sometimes she gets caught up in that. And listen, I'm not immune. I think it's rare that I do, but me being someone who is nonpartisan, I'm not on any tribe, so I do see a lot of the nonsense coming from the so-called left. And sometimes it's rare, but sometimes I can get caught up in that. So, for example, I could potentially very easily be harder on Joe Biden than is necessary. You should certainly be hard on Joe Biden for many reasons, but I could see myself being harder than necessary just because of, I guess, getting caught up in that sort of, I'm human, right? So anyway, they point out that the reason for the ruling is because they say that Congress needs to make a law. Congress needs to act. Congress is the one that needs to enforce this. Okay, sure, but what's the basis for that claim? According to Breaking Points, which is why I put a question mark on this video, I need to drill in myself. I can't take their word for it, right? They're usually pretty good, so I have good faith that they're accurate in their interpretation of what the Supreme Court said, but I would never just simply trust what they say. According to them, this is the basis. The basis is that in the reading of the Constitution, the last part of that section that talks about disqualification, it references Congress. Now, Breaking Points actually went far enough to read what it actually says. A lot of right-wing media, they'll just simply say stuff because typically a lot of stuff they say is nonsense, so they don't want you to see the real deal. They want you to just know how to think. They want to tell you how to think, which is ironically something that a lot of the right-wing media will say about the left. You know, it's just like, you're thought police or whatever. But yet, that's how a lot of stuff works in right-wing media. But they actually read the Constitution, right? So it's not them just saying stuff and you take their word for it. They're like, no, this is what it says. But then I listened to what they said. I'm like, wait a minute. That's what you just read doesn't match what you're saying. You're saying that the Constitution suggests or states that Congress needs to be the one to enforce this disqualification, but the words you read didn't say that. Let me read what it says. I'm gonna read the whole thing and then we'll talk about the last section. Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of the House, no, sorry, that's actually the section that is problematic that I have a different reading of. 1 second, I apologize. We're gonna read the whole thing. We're gonna read the whole thing. We're gonna read it the whole thing like they did, but we're gonna somehow come to a different conclusion. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress, right? So they're saying this is what it is. If you partaken in an insurrection, you cannot hold office. That is what the rule is. But, right? But is saying like there's like an exception or some other detail. Congress may, didn't say they require, they say they may. They haven't, I mean, may means option, right? If I say you may leave, I'm not telling you to get out, right? I say you may leave. If you want to leave, you can, right? So keep that in mind. Look at what the word, let's think critically and actually understand what words mean. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. What does that mean? And it's just amazing to me that millions and millions of Americans can read that exact same statement, can hear it being read on a show like Breaking Points, and somehow be completely oblivious to what it's saying. That last statement is the loophole by which you can circumvent this restriction, right? If you are disqualified based on what I just read to you, you can get out of the disqualification, right? You can get out of this disqualification. You can have the disability removed. That's what that means. The disability is you can't run for Congress because you were involved in insurrection. That's a disability, right? That's something that restricts you from being able to run for president. That's what disability means. I'm disabled from running for president because I was involved in an insurrection. Removing that disability means I can actually run anyway. How could that happen? It requires an act of Congress. So actually, the Supreme Court would be currently violating the Constitution if they allow Donald Trump to remain on the ballot without Congress by a 2/3 vote in each house removing this restriction. That's what it's saying. It's saying Congress is the only body that has the ability to allow Trump to stay on the ballot. Somehow they interpreted it the opposite way. Let me read what it says again. But, what does the word but mean, right? I'm about to give you $1 million. Yay! But I'm only going to give it to you if you do X, Y, and Z. Oh, I can't do that, so I guess you're not getting $1 million, right? You know what buts are? If somebody tell you they're going to do something, and then you hear the buts, and you're like, oh, man, right? So it says straight up that you cannot run for president if you're involved in an insurrection. But you can if Congress, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, removes this ability. They have the ability to allow Trump to stay on the ballot. But somehow the Supreme Court, through their incompetence, is ruling that, opposite of what the Constitution says, Trump is going to be allowed to ignore this restriction without Congress saying he can do so. Amazing. And again, the most amazing part is how many people won't get that. I'm going to look and see if MSNBC picks up on that. I don't think so. I think they're going to talk about how the Supreme Court is conservative, this, and our democracy, and how could Trump be? They're not going to talk about the substance. They're not going to talk about what the Constitution actually says and how the Supreme Court, who's supposed to be the supreme interpreter of the Constitution, how they went against what the Constitution says, even though it's not complicated. It's very clear what it says. I'm going to read it one more time. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. Right? Are they interpreting this as Trump is a disability? And they're saying, and why would you start with but? So you're saying Congress is the one that needs to remove Trump being a disability? So hopefully for this country, Breaking Point is wrong, and that is not the basis of why they ruled in favor of Trump. Because if they did, man, we insane asylum. We are lost as a country. And another thing, just the insanity of this country, a lot of right-wingers will be excited about the Trump won. Yes, 9-0. It went too far. Almost none of them are going to recognize that a key part of this disqualification is based on him participating in an insurrection. But Congress doesn't rule that. Right? The people who are excited about this, they believe it wasn't an insurrection. But yet the highest court who looks at this, the primary reason to remove him from the ballot is if he participated in an insurrection. If the Supreme Court believes that he didn't participate in an insurrection, why would they bother with, well, we believe that Congress? They would just be like, listen, you have to find him guilty. He wasn't found guilty. Or they could say, based on what happened, we don't believe in insurrection. Right? Now that you could say, well, the case is not whether he was an insurrection or not an insurrection, so they can't rule on whether it is. Okay, I would say legit, right? But they don't have to rule on whether he was or not. They can simply point out the fact that no one else has ruled. Right? He hasn't been tried in court. He hasn't had his day in court to find out whether he was in an insurrection or not. Right? So they're not ruling on whether it was or not. They're ruling on the Constitution says if you've done X, you cannot do Y. And they can rule that no one has demonstrated that he did X. We're not going to rule whether he did X or not, but we recognize that no one has ruled officially he did X. They didn't say nothing about that. But the people who like Trump, they're not going to pick up on that. They're not going to talk. They'll simply say it out of hand, disconnect from anything. They'll say something like, he wasn't proven guilty, whatever. But they're not going to critique the Supreme Court and say, why didn't they say that he didn't do an insurrection? That's how we don't think in this country, right? They're too preoccupied with the guy on their side won. Yes, Trump won. I know. Yeah, they went too far. I told you they went too far. And these liberals and this. Let me go to MSNBC and see what MSNBC has to say. Rachel Maddow is going to have a fit. We own the libs. We won something. Why didn't the Supreme Court rule that you can't remove him? Because the reason to remove him has not been clarified, has not been confirmed, has not been established, right? If they say you can't run for president if you have killed someone, and I haven't been convicted of murder, how are you going to remove me? If the Supreme Court took that case, they'd be like, listen, this guy, I mean, there's people saying stuff that he murdered somebody, but there's no court cases, no. You gotta prove that he did the murder first. And I said, and then come with no, well, it's the Congress needs to, even though that's not what it's saying. Even if it was saying the way that they said it was saying, why would that matter? It don't matter, Congress, whatever Congress needs to. What is there to enforce if there's no insurrection? Think about why that was not the focus of the ruling, right? Everybody's gonna, to me, this is gonna be one of those cases where everybody gets it wrong. It's just like the memo. Remember that thing with the memo? What was the memo thing with the Trump call? And they were talking about the memo, and everybody was reading it as a transcript. Even though they would show you the thing on a screenshot, and it says right on the top, memorandum. It literally says memorandum on it, but you had the talking points everywhere, right, left. Everyone's like, oh, the transcript, this on the transcript. It was a memo. We can't read in this country. We can't think critically in this country. It's just insanity. It's not about, I know the left love to talk about the right. It's crazy. Man, y'all crazy too, right? And we'll leave it at that. This is the Debate Me channel. Debate Me in the comment section below. Click on the like button, subscribe, smash that bell. Be well. Rocket Man, Rocket Matrix. Trump will be on the ballots. All Trump has to do is endorse third-party candidates, and the GOP will cave in. Ha ha! You got a point there. All right, guys, I'm out.